You can also import images and photos into Photoshop. Now let's look at how we can actually do that. So I have previously downloaded an image from the internet. What I should do now is to simply click and drag, bring it into the Photoshop window, and then release the mouse button. So as you can see right now, there is a blue frame around my image. What I need to do is to confirm importing by just clicking on this button here. So now my image file is in Photoshop. Photoshop is actually capable of importing different types of images. As you know, there are different image file formats available. Two of the most important image files that you should be familiar with are the JPG and the PNG files. Both of these file types are relatively small and they have really good quality. And that is why they are one of the most common file types that you can find on the web. The most important difference between these two file types is that, unlike JPG files, PNG files actually store transparency data. Let me show you what that means. So I have previously downloaded two images of an apple, one in JPG format and the other in PNG format. So let's see what happens when I import these files into Photoshop. So first I import the JPG file into Photoshop. So as you can see, when I import this file into Photoshop, we still have the background of the apple, this white background, visible on the image. And now let's see what happens when I import the PNG file, which has the transparency data encoded into it. So when I import this one, as you can see, unlike the JPG file, here we do not have that white background. This, as I mentioned before, is because PNG files can store transparency data. So remember that whenever you need transparency data, you need to work with PNG files. Now let's look at how we can find PNG files with transparency data. It is actually quite simple to find such files. What you need to do is just go to Google and Google Images and search for the type of file that you're looking for. Let's say, for example, right now I'm looking for an image of a car, so I just type in car, and after that I type in PNG. So as you can see, a lot of different images appear, but what you should know is that some of these images are fake PNG files. That means that they don't actually have transparency data stored in them. So in order to find genuine PNG files with transparency data, what you should note is that, first of all, the image should have a white background here when you're searching for it. And then when you click on that object or that image, here in this window, the background of the image should be like this, a checkered background. So right now I know that this is a genuine PNG file with transparency data. So I can use this image in my Photoshop file and it will be a PNG file with transparency data. So let's just save it here for now. I go to my Photoshop and I import this image file. So as you can see, this is a PNG file with transparency data and there is no background here. Now if you look at the thumbnails of the images that we have imported in Photoshop on the layers panel, you probably note that there is a small icon in the lower right corner of the thumbnail which indicates that this is a smart object. Now I leave it to you to search on the web and to learn more about what smart objects are and what are their benefits, but it happens sometimes that you want to manipulate the images that you have imported in Photoshop. For example, you may want to erase part of that image. And normally when you want to do that on an imported image, what happens is that if I click on the eraser tool here, you'll see that the mouse cursor turns into this icon that indicates that this operation is not permitted. The reason for that is that the object that we have here, the apple in this case, is a smart object and you're not allowed to operate this function on this specific smart object. So how should we deal with this? So what you need to do is that you just need to right click on the specific layer on this smart object. And then you will see that there is an option called Rasterize Layer. When I click on this Rasterize Layer, see what happens to that small icon on the lower right corner of my thumbnail. So it's no longer there. And if I bring the mouse cursor over the object in the scene, you will note that the cursor is no longer showing the previous icon. So this means now that I can actually erase this part of the image. So always pay attention to that small icon in the lower right corner of the thumbnail, and if you need to manipulate that specific smart object, remember that you need to rasterize it first.